The U.S. and Israel will fail the people of Iran as they've failed the people of Iraq, as they've failed the people in the Holy Land. And that's been the plan from the start. That's why the official story keeps changing depending on the audience. They have nukes. I'm just kidding. We obliterated those months ago. Now, you know what? They never had them anyway. Seriously, though, we have to free those people from this horrific regime. Actually, we need their oil. Well, we don't, but we should cut China off from their reserves. Meanwhile, U.S. troops, who Trump informed should be prepared to die for this campaign, are being told by their commanders that Trump has been, quote, anointed by Jesus to light the signal fire in Iran and mark his return to Earth, according to over 100 complaints by service members who don't want to die for a suicide cult. Meanwhile, the Trump family is just making billions in bribes from Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, selling arms, Bitcoin, real estate deals, whatever. No loyalty to any border, ideology, or religion at all. And the Trump-Netanyahu regime has made their intentions clear by their actions. They want to destroy Iran. Tehran, they're bombing police stations to destabilize it. They're hitting hospitals, residential areas, cafes, schools, the border with Iraq to open way for armed Kurdish troops who've been dispossessed for 100 years in the hopes they can flood Iranian cities and start a sectarian war. They will fail at regime change, fail at liberation, fail at preventing a nuclear arms race, and that is the plan. Some of the oldest continuous civilizations on Earth, home to deep, rich cultures that have transformed our entire world, are being bombed, not by nations, because a nation means a people who are native to a land. And the United States and Israel are not nations by that definition. No, the whole Fertile Crescent is being bombed by business enterprises. There is no culture clash, East versus West, or some nonsense like that. The United States is not a culture. It's a brand that changes its narrative depending on the market and always tells conflicting stories to make sure the people are divided against each other so they don't focus on the business model, which is right there, exposed for all to see in the Epstein files. You can find it all over the place, like that email that Jeffrey Epstein wrote to Peter Thiel, the billionaire co-founder of PayPal and Palantir, when Jeffrey explained that, quote, finding things on their way to collapse, much easier than finding the next bargain. Trump strategist Steve Bannon called Epstein a master bomb maker, and he was always right there next to the worst actors on the world stage, sending money to the Israeli military and illegal settlements in occupied Palestine. And Epstein was funneling weapons into Iran as well for years, while Israel did the same for forever wars, for prolonged and continuous destruction. That's the blueprint. Destroy a nation, impoverish its people, bury its history, and let the monsters feast on the wreckage. Netanyahu, the butcher of Palestine, and his best friend Trump, who's also Epstein's best friend, want you to believe that monsters are the only ones who can save you from monsters. But believing that is a trauma response. It's the result of a lifetime living under monsters just like them. And don't imagine these guys are anomalies either, breaking a beautiful system that was founded on the brand that we call liberty or equality. These monsters are running the same centuries-old business model that genocided Native Americans, produced the transatlantic slave trade, and the Age of Misery, where a third of factory workers were children, working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, a system that would soon need oil. And so it was 1908 when the British first found some in the Middle East, in Persia, southwestern Iran, and went about extracting it for decades until 1953, when Iran's last democratically elected prime minister dared suggest that their oil belonged to Iranians, who should share its profits. And so the US and Britain installed a dictator to continue their oil extraction. And that dictator's secret police, trained by the CIA and Mossad, the Israeli equivalent, tortured thousands and thousands of people over 20 years. The country went into turmoil, and so when Iranians overthrew that Western-backed dictator, an even more oppressive regime, an extremist republic took control, calling itself Islamic, a claim that most of the world's Muslims might dispute. The response from the West was to arm Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein to fight Iran for 8 years, which resulted in over 1 million people being killed. And when Saddam used chemical weapons, well, the West just looked the other way. As it turns out, the West was actually funding both sides. Failure was the plan from the start. Collapse, much easier than finding the next bargain. In case there's any doubt about the U.S. government's attitude toward the people of Iran, during the Reagan administration, when the U.S. Navy was patrolling the Gulf to protect more oil, trigger-happy sailors shot down an Iranian passenger plane, killing 290 civilians, 66 children. Regarding U.S. behavior in the Middle East, Vice President George Bush Sr. said at the time, "I will never apologize. I don't care what the facts are." Then he became president and gave that Navy captain a medal. Then came decades of sanctions, economic blockades, punishing Iran for claiming ownership over its oil and daring to sell it, and for opposing the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, elevating this horrific regime into a kind of hero to the resistance movement. And so the West seized the opportunity to impose more sanctions, collapsing Iran's currency, gutting their hospitals, destroying the middle class, telling the world it's Iran that is the greatest threat to the region, and that the regime was developing nuclear weapons. But Iran signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Iran's leader issued a religious decree banning nuclear weapons repeatedly for 20 years. They submitted to international inspections over and over again. This genuinely horrific regime executing, kidnapping, torturing, oppressing its own people, still willing to make a deal with the United States. But Trump tore that last one up, assassinated their top general at a diplomatic meeting in a third country, and then the U.S. and Israel bombed them for 12 days straight, killing enough civilians to make it proportionally the equivalent of Iran's 9/11. Meanwhile, Israel has at least 200 nuclear warheads, according to Colin Powell, the last time he mentioned it. They've never signed the treaty. They've never allowed a single inspection. They've built their bombs in total secrecy. And when a whistleblower told the world, Mossad, their CIA, kidnapped the guy, locked him in solitary confinement for over 10 years. Israel is also the only nuclear power to have threatened to use its arsenal to blow up the whole world. They call that the Samson option, a deterrence doctrine. If the state ever faces existential defeat, so will the whole of humanity. A policy ripped straight from Dr. Strangelove. You know, in the United States, we have a law that says military aid must be cut to any country with uninspected nuclear weapons. Israel's had them for 60 years. And yet we've sent them $300 billion in taxpayer money. Every cent was illegal, a crime. And that $300 billion, that's enough to have ended all the homelessness in the nation, all poverty for every family in the country, enough to have also started a jobs program to upgrade every U.S. city. But that would have made us a real nation. And that's not the business model. Destroy a country, impoverish its people, let the monsters feast on the wreckage. That's not just foreign policy, that's our policy. That is why there's an economic crisis in every city under occupation of that business model. In the United States, Britain, Australia, Canada. This model doesn't accidentally destroy civilization. Civilization is the target, finding things on their way to collapse. The worship of wealth and power, child sacrifice, destruction for profit, which, as every wisdom tradition since the dawn of time has warned, is the religion that brings Armageddon. You know, a story is the most powerful weapon in the world. And the story that originated in that fertile crescent, that's been told for thousands and thousands of years, that all humankind is one, to love thy neighbor as thyself, that all people are our people, that all children are our children, and that what you do for the least of these, you do to me, and that this commandment is the highest of them all. This is the story they want destroyed, most of all. That's why they're centered on Palestine and Iran, Lebanon, Yemen, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya. You don't bomb the birthplace of our first recorded cities, what the majority of the world calls its holiest lands, by accident. These men are monsters. But the good news is they are a tiny group of little monsters who know their time is up. And that's why they're trying to have their extinction burst and take us all out with them. Record numbers of people no longer believe in them anymore, or their PR platforms with their packaged headlines. America did this. Iran did that. Russia did this. China is doing nothing. None of these nations' peoples are doing anything of the sort. And the corporate Democrats, corporate so-called labor parties, pretending the real problem with all this is there doesn't seem to be a coherent plan. This war is not being managed properly. They didn't file the proper paperwork. It is difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it. Failing the people is the plan, finding things on their way to collapse. Meanwhile, on the round part of the planet, most people see corporate media for what it is: public property, stolen for psychological warfare, churning out trillions of little subplots, targeting trillions of little markets, all in service to one narrative: the promotion of a business model whose time is over if we act and do our part.